My name is Rachel Cole. I'm 33 years old, and I live in a house with a yellow front door that my husband David painted the summer before Oliver was born, because I said yellow front doors make a house look like it's happy to see you. He spent an entire Saturday afternoon on it. He didn't complain once. That is the kind of man he is on his best days, and I want you to hold on to that image of him, because the rest of this story requires it. My son Oliver is 14 months old. He has dark eyes that go very round when he is surprised, which is often because the world is still new enough that almost everything in it qualifies as surprising. He has 4 teeth, a laugh that sounds like hiccups stacked on top of each other, and a habit of crawling to the dog bowl and sitting next to it in companionable silence, as if he and the bowl have an understanding that the rest of us are not privy to. Our dog is named Butter, a golden retriever, 11 years old, who regarded Oliver's arrival with the patient resignation of someone who has accepted that their retirement plans have been restructured. They are now, against all odds, best friends. Oliver brings Butter offerings, a wooden spoon, a sock, once a full banana. Butter accepts them gravely. Oliver took his first steps on a Saturday afternoon in September. His father was not there. I want to tell you this story carefully, because I think it deserves to be told carefully. Not because it ends badly, it doesn't, but because the middle of it is the kind of middle that changes something permanently. And I want to be precise about what changed and why. I think a lot of stories about marriage and mothers-in-law get told with a villain, and I don't have a villain. What I have is a situation that accumulated over 7 years, quietly, the way water accumulates in a basement. You don't notice it until you're standing in it, and the level is at your ankles. My husband's name is David. He is a good father. I want to say that clearly and early, because the rest of this story might make it sound like he isn't, and that would not be accurate. He is present. He is warm. He reads to Oliver every night without being asked. He does the voices for every character in every book, including the inanimate objects, which Oliver finds extremely funny. He gets up for the 3 a.m. wake-ups without complaint. He talks about Oliver at work in the way that embarrasses people who aren't parents yet. He loves our son the way people love things. They didn't know they were capable of loving until the thing arrived and rearranged everything. He is also a man who was raised by a woman who made herself the center of his world, so gradually and so completely that he doesn't always realize how far out from his own life he has drifted until someone points it out. His mother's name is Sandra. Sandra is 62 years old. She has silver hair cut in a precise bob. She wears linen in summer and cashmere in winter, and has opinions about restaurants that she delivers as facts. She is not a cruel woman. She is not unkind. She has never said a bad word to me directly, never interfered in our parenting in any overt way, never shown Oliver anything but genuine love and attention. She is, by most measurable standards, a fine mother-in-law. She also operates, and I want to be precise about this, on the assumption that her needs represent a kind of gravitational force that reorganizes the schedules of everyone around her without requiring discussion or negotiation. It is not malicious. It is the accumulated result of decades of being accommodated, so that accommodation has stopped feeling like a choice anyone is making, and has started feeling like simply how things work. Sandra's birthday is in September. It has always been in September. This is not new information. This particular September, Sandra decided she wanted a birthday lunch. Not a dinner, a lunch on the Saturday at a restaurant 40 minutes from our house. She wanted David there. She wanted David's brother Michael there. She wanted it to feel like an event. She communicated this in the way she communicates most things, not as a question but as a fact, stated in advance, assumed to be accommodated, with the silent understanding that questioning it would be the kind of thing that gets remembered. The Saturday in question was the same Saturday I had asked David 2 weeks earlier to stay home. Oliver had been pulling himself to standing for 10 days. He was close. Any parent who has watched a child practice standing knows what close looks like. The particular concentration on the face, the testing of weight, the calculation happening behind the eyes like a small engineer running load assessments. He was going to walk. Probably this weekend, I had told David. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold, and Oliver on the floor next to me, pulling himself up on my chair leg, and I said, I don't want to miss it. David was at the counter. He turned around and looked at Oliver. He watched him stand against the chair leg, wobble, recalibrate, hold. He said, I know. I'll be back by 3. Sandra's lunch will be over by 2 at the latest. I said, okay, I want to tell you about that okay. I have said okay to David about Sandra probably 400 times in 7 years. Not always with grace, not always without the particular silence that follows an okay and means something other than okay. But I have said it, each time, because I had made a calculation about what was worth the energy and what wasn't. And most of the time, the calculation came down on the side of not. It wasn't surrender. It was more like a long, slow negotiation with reality, in which reality kept winning. This okay was different, and I knew it when I said it. But I said it anyway. He left at 11. He kissed Oliver on the top of his head and said, be good, buddy. He kissed me and said, 3 o'clock. I promise. I watched him back out of the driveway from the kitchen window. Sandra's lunches do not end at 2. This is documented fact, established over 7 years of attendance and post-mortem debriefs, and the particular expression on David's face when he comes home from one of them. Not quite guilty, not quite relaxed, something in between, like a man who has been somewhere pleasant for longer than he intended. Sandra's lunches end when Sandra decides they are over, which is when the table feels ready to release them, which is when the conversation has circled back around to all its subjects enough times that it has achieved a kind of completion. This takes time. It always takes more time than anyone estimates going in. I knew this. I said, okay anyway. I should have spent the energy. Oliver took his first steps at 1:47 in the afternoon. I was sitting on the living room floor with him, the way I had been sitting on the living room floor with him for 10 days, patient and present, watching him practice. Butter was on the couch behind me in the specific illegal position she occupies whenever David is out of the house. The light was coming in through the south window at a low afternoon angle. It was the kind of light that makes ordinary rooms look like paintings. Oliver was holding onto the edge of the coffee table. He had been standing there for about 30 seconds, which was longer than usual. He was looking at me, not at the table, not at the floor, not at Butter, at me, with the expression of someone who has made a decision. He let go. He took 3 steps. He sat down. He looked at his hands as if they had done something without his permission, and he wasn't sure yet whether he approved. I was crying before he sat down. Not sad crying, the other kind, the kind that arrives when something is so precisely what you hoped it would be that your body doesn't know what else to do with it. The kind that isn't about grief and isn't about fear and isn't about anything except the fact that you are present in a moment that matters, and you know it while it's happening, which almost never happens, which is the most precious thing in the world when it does. I said, Oliver, you walked. I said it out loud even though there was no one else in the room, because I needed to say it to someone, and he was the only someone there. Butter lifted her head from the couch cushion. Oliver looked at me with round dark eyes. Then he looked at the coffee table. Then he looked at the floor. Then he pulled himself back to standing. I had my phone in my hand. I had been holding my phone for 10 days specifically for this. I caught the second attempt on video, 7 seconds. He stands up from the floor, takes 4 steps this time, looks directly at the camera with the expression of someone who has completed a successful experiment and is ready to document the results, and sits back down. 7 seconds. I sat on the floor of the living room with Butter's head now resting on my knee, and Oliver sitting in front of me looking pleased with himself, and I felt something split cleanly down the middle inside me. Not anger, not exactly. Something quieter and more permanent. The feeling of a door closing on something that was still inside the room. The feeling of a moment that had existed once and would not exist again, folding itself up and becoming the past. I texted David. He walked. 1:47. I have it on video. David replied 11 minutes later. Oh my God, I'm so sorry I missed it. Coming home now. He came home at 4:15. I have thought about those 11 minutes many times. I think what they represent is that he had to sit with the text long enough to understand what it meant before he could respond to it. That he read it and put the phone down and felt something, and that feeling took 11 minutes. I don't think he was indifferent. I know he wasn't indifferent. The look on his face when he came through the door confirmed what the 11-minute delay had already suggested, that he understood completely what he had missed. He came in through the front door and went straight to Oliver, who was on the floor with his stacking rings, and picked him up and held him for a long time. He said, I'm sorry, buddy, I missed it. He held Oliver against his chest and looked at me over Oliver's shoulder. I looked back at him. I didn't say anything. We had pasta for dinner. Oliver ate approximately 5 pieces and threw the rest systematically on the floor, which Butter regarded as her finest hour. David gave Oliver his bath and read him 2 books and stayed in the room after the light went off until Oliver's breathing changed, which is something he does every night, just sits there in the dark, listening to his son fall asleep. I know because I've stood in the hallway and heard the silence, the particular settled silence of a room where someone is keeping watch. After Oliver was in bed, David came downstairs and we sat at the kitchen table. The overhead light was on, which felt too bright for the conversation, but neither of us moved to change it. He said, I'm sorry. She kept ordering things. Dessert, then coffee. Then Michael started a whole thing about the house in Vermont, and I didn't want to just stand up in the middle of it. I looked at my husband. I said, I know. And I need you to understand something. You missed the first steps. You are never going to get that back. I have a video, and you can watch it as many times as you want, and it will not be the same as being on the floor of the living room at 1:47 on a Saturday afternoon. That moment existed once. It's gone now. That's not a threat. It's not a punishment. It's just a fact. And I need you to hold it like a fact and not let it become something you process and then file away. He was quiet. The refrigerator made its settling sound. Butter sighed from her bed in the corner. I said, I am not angry at Sandra for having a birthday. I am not angry at you for loving your mother. I am telling you that I told you 2 weeks ago that this weekend was important, and you told me you'd be home by 3, and you got home at 4:15, and our son walked at 1:47 and you weren't here. Those are the facts. I'm not asking you to explain them. I'm asking you to sit with them. He said, I know. I said, I need you to decide what you're going to do differently. Not for me, not because I'm asking you to. For yourself, because you're the one who has to live with having missed it. He didn't say anything for a long time. The kitchen was very quiet. Then he said, I should have left at 1:30. When the lunch went past 2, I should have just gotten up and said I had to get home. She would have been upset. Yes, I said, she would have been upset. He looked at the table. I know which one matters more, he said. I looked at him. I know you do, I said. I just need you to act like you do. He nodded. We didn't solve everything that night. I want to be honest about that. We didn't have a single kitchen table conversation that restructured 7 years of accumulated accommodation. We went to bed a little before 11, and it was the kind of going to bed that is not yet resolved, where you lie next to each other in the dark, and both of you are awake, and neither of you says so. I thought about Oliver. I thought about the 7 seconds. I thought about the way he looked at his hands after. I thought, we are going to be okay. And I thought, but something has changed. Both of those things were true. I want to tell you what happened after that conversation because I don't want to leave you with a story that ends in a kitchen at 4:15 and doesn't go anywhere. Things changed, not dramatically, not with a grand gesture or a formal intervention or a difficult confrontation with Sandra that resolved everything over dinner, but specifically and measurably in the way that real change happens, in small decisions, repeated, that accumulate into a different pattern. David started a calendar, not a shared digital calendar, not something I asked for or suggested, a paper calendar he made himself, on the inside front cover of the spiral notebook he keeps on the kitchen counter for grocery lists and phone numbers and whatever else needs to be written down. He wrote in it the dates and events he had committed to, Oliver's pediatric appointments, my work deadlines, days I had mentioned mattered, and he started treating those commitments the way he treated work commitments, with the baseline assumption that they would be honoured unless something genuinely catastrophic intervened, and with the growing understanding that Sandra's preference for a lunch to continue past its stated end time was not a catastrophic intervention. 3 weeks after the first steps, Oliver got sick. A bad cold, the kind that 14-month-olds get and immediately share with everyone in the house. Oliver was fever and misery, and the specific neediness of a sick small person who only wants to be held, and then, once held, to be put down, then held again. David worked from home that whole week. He held Oliver while I slept. He sat on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m. while Oliver breathed steam and watched cartoons on a tablet with glazed eyes. He didn't mention Sandra once. He was, that week, entirely present, as if he had recalibrated something. Sandra's birthday lunch the following year was scheduled for a Sunday. David told her at 12:45 that he needed to leave by 1:30 because he had promised to take Oliver to the park. He was home by 2:10. Oliver ran to him at the front door with both arms up, which is the greeting that contains everything. I watched from the kitchen doorway. I noted it. I keep the video of Oliver's first steps on my phone, 7 seconds. He stands up from the floor, takes 4 steps, looks at the camera with the expression of someone who has completed a successful experiment, and sits back down. I have watched it so many times that I have memorized the quality of the afternoon light in it, the exact angle at which it falls across the living room floor, the sound of butter repositioning on the couch in the background. David has watched it more times than I have. He showed it to his mother at Christmas. He showed it to his colleagues at work. He showed it to my parents on their last visit, holding his phone out with the expression of a man sharing evidence of something important. He narrates it with the specific pride of someone who is making sure the moment is witnessed as widely as possible because he could not witness it himself, as if witnessing can be retroactive, as if enough eyes on those 7 seconds can in some way fill in what was missing from 1:47 on a September Saturday. I have never said, that's not how it works. Maybe in some small way it is how it works. I don't know. Last month, Oliver, who is now a committed and purposeful walker, walked from the kitchen to the living room carrying a wooden spoon and sat down next to the dog bowl with the gravity of a person who has somewhere important to be. And this is it. Butter raised her head. Oliver placed the spoon next to the bowl. He sat there. He looked at the spoon, the bowl, the spoon again, and then at Butter with the expression of a philosopher, who has confirmed a long-held theory. David and I watched from the kitchen doorway. David said, "Do you think he knows where he's going?" I said, "I think he always knows where he's going. I think he just doesn't always tell us." David laughed. The real kind, the unguarded kind that comes out when something is genuinely funny and not just politely funny. Oliver looked at us over his shoulder, looked at the wooden spoon, looked at the dog bowl, looked back at us with the round, dark eyes that go wider when the world is surprising. Then he got up and walked back. I am 33 years old. I live in a house with a yellow front door. My husband painted it the summer before our son was born, and it has weathered 3 winters now and is starting to peel at the lower left corner, and we keep meaning to touch it up. Oliver took his first steps at 1:47 on a September afternoon in a living room full of low golden light, and I was there, and I caught 7 seconds of it on my phone, and those 7 seconds are the most watched video in this house by a considerable margin. His father missed it. His father will not miss the next thing. That is enough. That is more than enough. That is, in fact, everything. If this story stayed with you, if you watched until here, please hit that like button and subscribe to Tender Heart Stories. Drop your location in the comments below. USA, UK, Canada, Australia, wherever you're watching from. I read every single one, every single day. And tell me, what's the moment with your child you would never want to miss? See you in the next one.